When Ministry released Filth Pig in 1996, it was a critical and commercial disappointment. Fans were divided by the change in style from high-energy walls of sound to heavy crawling sludge. The momentum of 1992's Psalm 69 was somewhat shattered. Psalm 69's sample-heavy, guitar-driven anthems appealed to alternative audiences of its time, and Filth Pig's stripped-down nihilism was largely inaccessible to that same audience. By the mid to late 90s, the popularity of grunge was waning, nu metal was gaining popularity, and classic industrial and electronic bands were being outshined by newer acts of the time. With the musical landscape evolving, Ministry was getting ready to face a low point in popularity. After finishing an intense tour supporting Filth Pig, Al Jourgensen and Paul Barker's initial goal was to go straight into the studio to record another Ministry album. By that time, most of their other projects were either defunct or put on hold. There was a slight deviation from the plan when a new Lard album was released in 1997, but much of the material on Pure Chewing Satisfaction was recorded years prior, so it didn't take a lot of laboring to finish after the Sphincter ended. Studio sessions for the next Ministry record would begin in February 1997. Sometime in 1998, the album was mostly finished, but Al and Paul didn't feel the material was up to their standards. One problem was that Al had a difficult time coming up with lyrics to some of the songs. Another problem was many of these songs were slow, and they didn't want to put out another slow record. So the album was started over. Only 2 songs, Nursing Home and Cafe, were kept and refined. At least 29 tracks were recorded during the overall sessions, with the final version of the album being submitted in November 1998. Dark Side of the Spoon was released in June 1999. On the cover was a naked obese woman wearing a dunce cap, facing a blackboard, with I Will Be God written all over it. Al had the idea of a kid drawing on a blackboard being on the cover, and Paul had the idea of a fat woman being on the cover. The resulting artwork was a compromise, giving an unintentional statement about fat Americans doing what they're told. For the title, it was a play on words referencing The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. It was also a reference to heroin. Al's drug addiction spiraled out of control in this period. Management put him on a stipend to try to limit how much drugs he could buy. Meanwhile, his friends Tim Leary, William Burroughs, and William Tucker, who toured with Ministry in the past, all died around this time. Just like on Filth Pig, Al's personal misery crept into the album. Bits of the pre-Filth Pig fun and humor returned, however. Supermanic Soul and Bad Blood are filled with rage, and there's even a swing-sounding song, Step. Wait a minute, swing? On a Ministry album? That's right. Dark Side of the Spoon was an experimental album with eclectic instruments and otherworldly sounds. Al and Paul wanted to incorporate other styles of music into the Ministry sound, such as jazz and country. So while Supermanic Soul and Bad Blood resemble other heavy Ministry songs, the rest of the album sounds psychedelic and hypnotic. If Ministry were concerned with commercial success, they would have made another Psalm 69. But Ministry already made Psalm 69 and had no interest in making Psalm 70. They pushed boundaries at the risk of losing fans. Many fans lost interest after Filth Pig came out, and even more tuned out after Dark Side of the Spoon was released. Just years before, Ministry were big enough that quarts of motor oil were given as promo items with the Jesus Built My Hot Rod single. Now they were playing smaller venues, and before the album even came out, it was rumored to be their last on Warner Brothers. Following Psalm 69 with Filth Pig was a bold move. Releasing Dark Side of the Spoon after Filth Pig's disappointing sales and reactions was an even bolder move. As with most Ministry albums, the production value is a large part of Dark Side's identity. For an overloaded sound, some of the guitars are plugged straight into the board while chained to multiple compressors. The overall sound is dark, spacious, and bass-heavy. Dark Side's ominous atmosphere is made possible by lots of reverb, especially on the drums. Some of the samples and electronics absent from Filth Pig come back. Similar to how songs on Filth Pig incorporated the harmonica and mandolin, instruments like the banjo and saxophone are used on this album. Many songs are groove-oriented because they were jammed. Ray Washam, who played on Filth Pig, is behind the drum kit again and has a hand in programming. Louis Svitek, who played on the previous 2 albums, plays guitar and helps with electronics. To a more minor extent, Zlatko Hukic also does some guitar and programming work. Doing backup vocals is Al's girlfriend at the time, Tycoon, and Yvonne Gage, who toured with Ministry when they were still synthpop. Supermanic Soul opens the album aggressively. Throughout is a fast kick snare beat. Al screams his way between rumbly and overblown guitars. There aren't a lot of channels used for this display of aggression, just pure frustration and energy in a minimalistic way. Whip and Chain slows things down to showcase the hypnotic and psychedelic direction this album has to offer. Buzzsaw sound and guitars drone their way through, and each instrument creates a dense atmosphere as the song goes. Like Game Show from Filth Pig, Al takes a break from his typical vocal effects to use a clean singing voice.
Don't think we've ever met. Don't think you've offered up a God-given name.
Bad Blood is the big hit from this album. Ministry tried putting the song on an album for a long time, but they were never able to make it work. Until now. The verses build tension with loud guitars and a constant kick drum, similar to You Know What You Are from The Land of Rape and Honey. This envelopment is destroyed with a vengeance for the chorus and after the guitar solo. Not only is this an uncommon instance of a guitar solo in a 1990s Ministry song, but there's also some slide guitar action and Tycoon's backup singing. This song was on the Matrix soundtrack album, though it didn't appear in the movie. There were people who'd never heard of Ministry that got their introduction because of the Matrix soundtrack. Speaking of movie soundtracks, Eureka Pyle was on the soundtrack for a Van Damme movie, Universal Soldier: The Return. What we have here is a jazzy electronic fusion. Its goal isn't to pump you up or to expel aggression, just to chill you out. For the first minute, Ray plays a lax but booming groove. Most of the way forward is a slow and syncopated drum beat while Al uses his singing voice again. Yvonne Gage sings backup vocals, and some of the loops give the song an Eastern flavor. Halfway through the album is Step. It blends the metal elements with the sound of swing. Step is a jazzy song, and a clear example of Ministry's sense of humor. Lyrically, it criticizes celebrities who use their drug addiction and rehabilitation to exploit media attention. Instead of handling their problems quietly, they feel the need to make headlines and put their problems out there in the world. Add pandering to their audience on top of it, and you've got the lyrics to Step. All the while, Al is doing some of his vocal delivery in a mocking country voice.
I don't even know who I am no more. I'm gonna get some help. Help me.
How much more over the top can this get? Well, there are samples from River's Edge inserted. That part where Crispin Glover's character finds his friend dead towards the end of the movie? Yes, his screams are in this. Nursing Home is the longest song on the album, 7 minutes. It's another facetious song, this time poking fun at how aging is viewed in society. Sounds of saxophones and a banjo accompany this slow, funky track. Some saxophone sounds are samples of Paul's brother, Roland, playing. The more squeaky and out-of-tune parts were played by Al. Nursing Home is a jam-style song, and the bass and drums come on strongly when called for. Afterwards is Cape, the most introspective of this set of songs. The word cape derives from the word kip, defined as a state of drowsy contentment, especially after the use of a narcotic. Clearly that's what Ministry was going for by making this song slow, dark, and atmospheric. Cape submerges you with its thick bass sound and heavy reverb, especially with the song's visceral and gothic tendencies. Plenty of distorted guitars are in place to grind hard. It's one of the darkest songs in Ministry's catalog. In what sounds like a metalized Lead and Gold song, Vex and Silence has Paul Barker giving an eerie vocal delivery. Vex and Silence is a hypnotic and foreboding dirge with its droning guitars and sound effects. This piece of work has its fair share of dissonance. Here is the end, here is nothing. The album's closer is about October 10, the day after Al's birthday. October 10th was superstitious to him because something tragic often happened to him or one of his friends on that day. In fact, Jim Nash, who co-operated Wax Trax, died on October 10th. This instrumental was Al's attempt to turn something negative into a positive. As for the song itself, it's jazzy, it's heavy, it's booming, it's hypnotic, and it's ominous. The ingredients that make Dark Side of the Spoon unique are all there. Bringing the jazz elements back one last time, there's a sample of a saxophone solo from Group Dancers by Charles Mingus. This song was also on the soundtrack for a PlayStation game, Street Skater 2. And that's it. Wait a minute, it's not over yet. A hidden track. Track 69. It's a recording over the phone of a song about the summertime. Many listeners didn't know what to think. Retailers like Kmart refused to sell the album because of the artwork. Bad Blood was nominated for a Grammy, but it didn't win. Warner Brothers dropped the band because of disappointing sales, though they would later put out a Greatest Hits album and a music video compilation. It was a troubled time for Ministry. Light shined at the end of the tunnel when Ministry was offered to appear in a scene for the 2001 movie AI Artificial Intelligence. Al Jourgensen later said that if it weren't for their cameo in the movie, Ministry probably would have broken up. As for Dark Side of the Spoon, some of its harsh critics would come back to it with a new appreciation. What Ministry had on their hands was an unsettling and unique album. Because Ministry albums are all different from each other on some level, fans can make up their own mind about what sounds the best to their ears. This is no exception for experimental albums like Filth Pig and Dark Side of the Spoon. Dark Side of the Spoon was just another chapter in the tale of Ministry, and the animosity would continue.